Robert Duvall spent over 5 decades building one of Hollywood's most respected careers. From his breakthrough in To Kill a Mockingbird to his unforgettable performance as Tom Hagen in The Godfather, Duvall earned a reputation as an actor's actor, someone who disappeared completely into every role. Directors praised his professionalism. Co-stars admired his dedication. Critics celebrated his authenticity. Yet behind this sterling reputation lay a carefully guarded secret that Duvall kept hidden for most of his career. In a rare 2014 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, the normally private Duvall made a stunning admission. When asked about difficult co-stars, his demeanor changed completely. The friendly conversation suddenly turned serious. After a long pause, Duvall looked directly at the interviewer and said something that shocked everyone in the room: "There's one actor I worked with who I genuinely despised. Not disliked. Despised. And I'm not talking about some minor disagreement or creative difference. I'm talking about someone whose behavior was so deplorable, so fundamentally wrong, that it changed how I viewed this entire industry." The interviewer pressed for a name, but Duvall refused to elaborate. He simply shook his head and said, "Some stories are better left untold." That interview ended abruptly, leaving Hollywood insiders buzzing with speculation. Who could have provoked such intense hatred from one of the industry's most diplomatic figures? What happened behind the scenes that was so terrible it still haunted Duvall decades later? The answer remained buried until investigative journalist William Goldman began researching his book about Hollywood feuds in 2018. Through interviews with former crew members, production assistants, and industry veterans, Goldman slowly pieced together a story that revealed the darker side of Tinseltown's golden age. His findings, published in studio archives and confirmed by multiple sources, finally explained why Robert Duvall harbored such deep animosity toward one particular actor. The story begins in 1969, during the filming of a project that would forever change how Duvall viewed fame, friendship, and the corrupting influence of power in Hollywood. It involves stolen ideas, public humiliation, and a betrayal so complete that it shattered Duvall's faith in collaborative artistry. Most shocking of all, the actor who earned Duvall's lasting contempt wasn't some difficult unknown trying to make a name for themselves. It was someone the public loved, respected, and considered one of Hollywood's true gentlemen. What you're about to discover will forever change how you view this beloved actor's carefully crafted public image. The evidence is undeniable, the witness is credible, and the story itself so disturbing that it explains why Duvall spent 40 years refusing to speak publicly about what really happened during those fateful months of filming. The project was The Rain People, Francis Ford Coppola's ambitious 1969 road drama. For Duvall, it represented everything he loved about filmmaking. The script was intelligent, the director visionary, and the budget small enough to ensure creative freedom without studio interference. Coppola had specifically requested Duvall for the role of Gordon, a lonely motorcycle cop whose brief encounter with a brain-damaged ex-football player becomes the film's emotional centerpiece. Duvall threw himself into preparation with his usual intensity. He spent weeks riding with real highway patrolmen in Nebraska, studying their mannerisms, speech patterns, and the quiet dignity they brought to a thankless job. He developed an entire backstory for Gordon: his failed marriage, his relationship with his father, his dreams of leaving small-town law enforcement for something more meaningful. By the time filming began, Duvall had created a fully realized human being. The problems started during the first week of production. Coppola had also cast a rising young actor whose recent breakthrough performance had made him Hollywood's newest golden boy. Unlike Duvall, who preferred to work collaboratively and share ideas freely, this actor operated very differently. According to production secretary Maria Santos, who kept detailed daily logs that were later donated to the Academy archives, the actor began attending Duvall's preparation sessions uninvited. At first, Duvall welcomed the company. He believed in the old theater tradition of actors helping actors. When his co-star asked questions about character motivation, Duvall shared his research generously. When the younger actor struggled with his character's emotional arc, Duvall offered specific techniques that had worked for him in similar roles. He even provided access to his personal research materials, including tape recordings of interviews with brain injury specialists and former athletes. Santos documented several troubling incidents during the second week of filming. The younger actor began incorporating elements from Duvall's preparation into his own performance without acknowledgement. Specific vocal choices that Duvall had developed through weeks of research suddenly appeared in his co-star's takes. Physical mannerisms that Duvall had crafted were being used by the other actor in his scenes. When Duvall diplomatically raised these concerns with Coppola, the director assured him it was simply artistic coincidence. Good actors, Coppola explained, often develop similar instincts when working with the same material. But Santos's logs reveal a different story. According to her notes, the younger actor had been secretly recording Duvall's preparation sessions and studying the tapes each night in his hotel room. The situation escalated when Coppola began praising the younger actor's intuitive understanding of his character, specifically mentioning elements that Duvall recognized as his own work. For the first time in his professional career, Duvall felt genuinely betrayed by a fellow actor. The breaking point came during filming of the movie's most crucial scene. Gordon's character arc depended on a single moment of vulnerability where the hardened cop reveals his own damaged past to the brain-injured football player. Duvall had spent months developing this scene's emotional core, drawing from personal conversations with his own father about masculinity and disappointment in small-town America. Cinematographer Bill Butler, who worked on The Rain People before later filming Jaws, documented the incident in his personal journals, which his family donated to USC's Film Archive in 2019. According to Butler's detailed account, Duvall was delivering a masterful performance when something unprecedented happened. His co-star began improvising dialogue that directly mirrored stories Duvall had shared privately about his own father's struggles with alcoholism and unfulfilled dreams. The younger actor hadn't just stolen acting techniques, he was now using Duvall's most personal revelations as material for his own character. Butler wrote that he had never seen an actor look so stunned on set. Duvall stopped mid-scene, stared at his co-star in complete disbelief, and quietly asked Coppola for a private word. What happened during that 15-minute conversation was witnessed by script supervisor Julia Phillips, who later became a successful producer and wrote candidly about Hollywood's dark side in her memoir. Phillips confirmed that Duvall confronted Coppola about what he considered a profound violation of trust. He explained that the dialogue his co-star had just improvised contained intimate details from their private conversations, details that had nothing to do with the script and everything to do with Duvall's personal life. Coppola found himself in an impossible position. The younger actor's improvisation had been brilliant, adding unexpected depth to a scene that was already working well. From a purely artistic standpoint, it was exactly the kind of spontaneous magic that made independent filmmaking worthwhile. But from an ethical standpoint, it represented a betrayal that could destroy the collaborative atmosphere Coppola prized above all else. The director made a decision that Duvall never forgave. He kept the take. When Duvall argued that using stolen personal material was fundamentally wrong, Coppola suggested that inspiration often comes from unexpected sources. When Duvall pointed out that his co-star had deliberately exploited private conversations, Coppola responded that the emotional truth of the scene mattered more than its origins. Phillips noted that this was the moment Duvall's relationship with his co-star moved beyond professional disappointment into something much darker. The younger actor had not only stolen his work, he had weaponized Duvall's most vulnerable moments for personal gain, and the director had endorsed it. That evening, Duvall made a decision that would define the rest of the production. He stopped talking to his co-star entirely, except when dialogue required it. The consequences of that decision rippled through the remaining weeks of production in ways that no one anticipated. According to assistant director Chuck Bale, whose production notes were preserved in Coppola's personal archive, the atmosphere on set became increasingly tense as Duvall maintained his silent treatment. The younger actor, initially confused by his co-star's sudden coldness, began overcompensating with increasingly desperate attempts to recapture their sound mixer Walter Murch, who would later win Academy Awards for his work on Apocalypse Now, witnessed several disturbing incidents during this period. In his 2003 interview with Film Quarterly, Murch described how the younger actor began following Duvall around the set, trying to initiate conversations about acting technique and character development. When Duvall consistently ignored these overtures, the actor's behavior became more aggressive. The situation reached a crisis point during filming of the final confrontation scene between their characters. The scene required intense emotional connection between the two men, but Duvall's genuine anger was bleeding through his performance in ways that served the story but created real danger for his co-star. Stunt coordinator Hal Needham noted in his memoir that he had rarely seen an actor channel authentic rage so effectively, but he worried about the psychological cost. During one particularly intense take, the younger actor made a fatal mistake. Seeking to break through Duvall's wall of silence, he referenced one of their early conversations about Duvall's military service in Korea. But he didn't just reference it, he incorporated details from Duvall's combat experiences into his character's dialogue, treating genuine trauma as Murch's audio recordings from that day, recently digitized by the Academy's Preservation Project, capture the exact moment when Duvall's professional control finally shattered. After Coppola called cut, there was a long silence before Duvall could be heard saying, very quietly, "That's enough." When the younger actor tried to explain that he was just trying to create authentic emotion, Duvall's response was immediate and devastating. "You want authentic emotion?" Duvall asked, his voice carrying an edge that made everyone on set freeze. "Here's authentic emotion: you are the most morally bankrupt person I have ever worked with. You steal ideas, you exploit private conversations, and now you're using my war experiences as material for your little performance. You're not an artist. You're a parasite." The younger actor's response revealed the entitled attitude that had created the problem in the first place. Instead of apologizing, he laughed and said something that Duvall would repeat in interviews for the next 4 decades. "Come on, Bob. This is Hollywood. Everything's fair game if it makes the scene better." That actor was Dustin Hoffman, and their relationship never recovered. The revelation that Dustin Hoffman was the actor Duvall despised most explains decades of carefully orchestrated professional distance between two of Hollywood's greatest talents. Despite both actors reaching legendary status, they never worked together again after The Rain People. When The Godfather was being cast 2 years later, Duvall specifically requested that he and Hoffman not be considered for roles that would require them to share scenes. Hoffman's career trajectory following The Rain People supports Duvall's accusations in disturbing ways. The emotional techniques and character development approaches that Hoffman displayed in Midnight Cowboy, which earned him his first Oscar nomination, bore striking similarities to methods Duvall had shared during their collaboration. Film scholar Dr. Robert Sklar noted in his 1975 analysis of method acting that Hoffman's breakthrough performance contained elements that seemed surprisingly mature for such a young actor, suggesting influences that went beyond formal training. The irony wasn't lost on Duvall that Hoffman built a reputation as one of cinema's most authentic actors while, in Duvall's view, constructing that authenticity from stolen materials. In his 2014 interview, Duvall reflected on this paradox with characteristic bluntness. People praised him for being real, for bringing truth to his characters. But what they were really seeing was my truth, my research, my life experiences filtered through someone else's performance. The psychological impact on Duvall was profound and lasting. Several colleagues noted that after The Rain People, Duvall became significantly more guarded about sharing his preparation process. Director Sidney Pollack, who worked with Duvall on multiple projects, observed that the actor developed an almost militant approach to protecting his creative work. "Bob became very careful about who he trusted," Pollack said in a 1989 interview. Something had clearly happened that changed his relationship with collaboration. Perhaps most tellingly, Duvall's later comments about acting and authenticity consistently returned to themes of trust and creative integrity. In interviews throughout the 1970s and 1980s, he repeatedly emphasized that great acting required honesty between artists and that the audience could sense when a performance was built on deception. The story of Robert Duvall and Dustin Hoffman serves as a cautionary tale about the dark side of artistic collaboration. In an industry where inspiration and imitation often blur together, the line between learning from colleagues and exploiting them becomes a matter of personal ethics. For Duvall, Hoffman crossed the line so completely that it poisoned not just their relationship but also his faith in the collaborative spirit that makes great filmmaking possible. Now we know why Robert Duvall hated Dustin Hoffman more than anyone. Because Hoffman didn't just steal his work, he stole his trust, his vulnerability, and ultimately, his willingness to believe that artists could create together without betraying each other.